spouses of an identical twin. What was your most embarrassing moment with the other twin? Dated an identical twin in college. At times, they suffered from what some call single personality syndrome. They would do everything together. All decisions were made together. Even simple things. They would wake up in the morning and say, "What are we wearing today?" Just giving some context for the story. As I said, I dated this girl in college. Her and her sister lived together. Now, the entire time we dated, her sister was single. This, more or less, made her sister the third wheel in everything we did as a couple. It was like dating both of them without the perks of dating both of them. I know what you were thinking. One time, the three of us went on a short 4-day cruise in the Caribbean. On the ship, we kind of all did our own thing. One morning, I got up and went to the gym and the girls went to breakfast. When I got back to the room, I saw who I thought was my GF back in the bed. Thinking we had a brief moment of alone time, I climbed in the bed, spooned up behind her, started kissing her neck, and ran my hand up her shirt. She turns her head, and to my horror, I realize that it's her sister and not my GF. I quickly backed away and said, "OMG, I am so sorry." She took it like a champ. She shrugged, smiled, and said it was bound to happen at some point. She also alluded to the fact that this might have happened before with guys that came before me. As far as I know, she never told my GF, and I sure as crap was not going to tell her. Plot twist, it was your GF. That was a test, and that's why she broke it off. You didn't tell her. Not my most embarrassing moment, but something close. I frequent a bar every week. All the servers know me and know my husband, who doesn't come every week but comes enough that our regular waitress knows who he is. One evening, husband's identical twin brother and 8-month pregnant wife go to the bar for dinner. Cue several servers giving them some intense side eye and pretty terrible, downright rude service. Brother-in-law says something like, "Huh, that's weird. Twin always says they have the best service here. Pretty sure Idol Ember comes every week," to his wife. His wife starts laughing and comments to the server, "Hey, I think you know my husband's twin and his wife. They come here every week." The service greatly improved after that. My granddad was an identical twin. He was in the Irish Army. His twin Eddie was not in the army. Eddie's daughter got a tattoo of Eddie on her leg. It's a big tattoo of him in his full army uniform. Nobody has the heart to tell her it's not her dad. Oh my goodness, that will be a devastating day for all when she finds out. My mum's a twin. I've caught her waving to mirrors in clothing stores a number of times thinking her sister is also there. In my younger years, I'd often run to my auntie when I wanted to ask my mum something, especially when she was at our house making coffee in the kitchen or something. That's awfully sweet actually, the waving to mirrors. A guy I work with has a twin brother who lives across the country. He took a video when he introduced his 2-year-old son to his twin brother for the first time. The moment that kid saw his uncle, his eyes just got huge and he kept looking back and forth. You could see his tiny brain explode and then he just started crying. That is infinitely adorable. Poor kid must have been so confused. My husband and his identical twin were wearing similar clothes and they look the same from behind. I hugged the wrong one. Awkward, but in the end not a huge deal. Not as bad as the guy who not just butt slapped, but fully vag gripped his mother-in-law by accident. My wife and I found out that her identical twin was a stripper when a bunch of my fraternity brothers went to the strip club and all started calling and texting me to ask if anything was wrong, and if I knew where my wife was. I have twin uncles and one of their wives suggested to the other wife that they should switch beds that night and see if the twins noticed. The other wife looked at her and burst out laughing and had to explain that's not how the look-alike thing worked. When I'm over his house, I have to be very sure when I approach him from behind to hug him that I have the right one. From the back you just can't tell, lol. Been there with my wife and her sister. They don't really look at all the same but they have very similar builds. So from behind they are easy to mix up. Not twin myself, but my brother and I look a lot alike. To the point, when we were in our 20s, that people mistook us for each other. I was out visiting my brother and his wife. We were getting back from a day trip and his wife said she's going to take a bath, in a way that it was obvious to me that she wanted him to join her. Well, we go inside. I start emptying the car and taking stuff back into the kitchen when I hear my sister-in-law right behind me say, "So I guess I'm taking my bath alone." I just stand there trying not to laugh before answering, "I think you have the wrong brother." She and I both burst out loud laughing. Still awkward, but it was funny. I got identical twin brothers. They were arguing and one called the other a face. It was funny after he realized they looked the same. They were not Lomeo, but Leo. I taught twins. I didn't notice I was teaching twins for a month. In my defense, I can't see faces well and everyone looks the same. My mom is a twin and her poodle loves everyone, but she can't stand my mom's twin. Barks, growls, hides and bites. Only person she does this with. And my aunt is a dog person. Dogs love her. Pretty certain the dog smells her different but sees the same person and is just thinking this is an imposter. Defense. He fricked my girlfriend. He later fricked the woman I thought I wanted to marry. We haven't spoken in 5 years but he comes up in conversation a lot. Like an awkward small talk when the clerk or the train ticket guy asks what brother I am and proceeds to ask how he is. Mandatory. I am not a spouse, but when I was 17 I dated one from a set of identical twin girls. Their parents were of the school of thought that one must have one of whatever the other had. So as a consequence, and completely predictable, they would pretend to be the other for fun. We were swimming at a lake near the town we lived in, and they showed up in identical bathing suits, jewelry, purses, flip-flops, towels, cell phones, watches, and food. We started swimming, and as teenagers are absolutely disgusting, started to fool around. I thought I was kissing my girlfriend when she laughed, pulled away and said, "You're right, he does use too much tongue." My budding erection vanished in embarrassment, and I was so confused I wouldn't touch either of them until they agreed to drink different beverages so I could keep track. My girlfriend wasn't mad, and in butt sight being 20/20 I should have just gone with it, but I did not. I left as soon as possible because they kept alternately teasing me, in a physical sort of way, and then changing drinks. Teenage me couldn't handle that kind of pressure. So my ex-GF and her twin shared a place. I thought my ex was in the shower. The shower had opaque doors on it so you couldn't really see who was inside the shower, but you could still see a silhouette of a woman that looked just like your girlfriend at the time. Anyway, I just got there to their home and had to use the bathroom. I rushed in, did a number 2 with all the bells and whistles. She slid open the shower door and said, "Susie, WTF are you doing?" My jaw just dropped to the ground. I was speechless. Thankfully I was done. Turns out my ex was in the backyard sitting by the pool. With all the bells and whistles. Well, aren't you a poo magician? My father is a twin. My mother has gotten dirty looks from strangers that know my uncle but not Daddy, and my father are twins. Thinking that we were some secret family. My aunt has attested to it happening to her as well. That's about it. It's pretty funny. My kids both kinda had their brains explode when they met my uncle for the first time. My boyfriend and his brother look insanely the same. His brother will walk around in the same slouchy position my boyfriend does when I come over, and all that really happens is I take a double take. Sometimes he shoots with the doors open and I blame my boyfriend, but it's him. I crap with THF doors open, but I am single so I have an excuse. Once I got greeted by a guy who mistook me with one of his friends. Then I met the friend. We've been calling each other brother ever since. Plot twist, you actually are. Posted it before. My ex-wife's sister stayed with us for a few months and for some reason liked to use our bathroom in the morning to get ready. One morning I walked in thinking it was my wife, lifted the towel she had wrapped around her and smacked the crap out of her butt. It wasn't my wife. In high school my BF was an identical twin. They'd do tricks at parties, switch clothes act. It was funny if you knew the trick. Or them, but everyone else was annoyed. One party me and BF's twins GF decided to get them wrong on purpose. We agreed we'd just keep going. They'd hate it. They weren't big on sharing at the best of times. We waited for the inevitable switch, and then went after them. For the first minute, they played it as they were the other, until the GF and I started to hint at a little privacy act. They stopped with that trick after that. Your all cap spelling of ETC made me doubt everything I know for about 20 seconds. My sister's husband is not a twin, but him and his brother could pass as twins. She said when they first got together she walked into the kitchen and smacked his brother's butt thinking it was him. When I was in high school I was dating a girl who had an identical twin. The girl I dated went to public school. The twin however went to a smaller school. Every once in a while they would swap places. Well, I wasn't informed of when it was happening. Imagine my surprise when I hopped in my girlfriend's car in the morning, leaned over to kiss her and boom, it's the sister. I wonder if they did that on purpose or not. My mother has an identical twin. My aunt obviously. So this is a story about my aunt's spouse. Apparently scent, among many other things, has a genetic component, so an oddity we discovered in my childhood is that our family dog, a cute miniature schnauzer, was completely unable to tell my mother and my aunt apart. When my aunt would come over to visit, our dog would walk in the room, look back and forth between them and just whine for a while. The world was apparently very confusing when there were two human mommies. On the plus side, this meant when we went out of town we could just leave our dog with my aunt and the dog settled in perfectly happy. The location was strange, but human mommy was there so everything was alright. Right up until my uncle tried to get in bed with his wife. Then our dog would immediately growl, bark and try to drive away the intruder with all his miniature might. My aunt thought it was hysterical, but for some reason my uncle didn't find this quite as funny. That's freaking hilarious. My husband doesn't have a twin, but we were at a friend's wedding and we were standing around and talking to a few people. This part is important. My husband is 6 feet 0 inches and I am 5 feet 0 inches. At this point, we had a few beers and were feeling good. Out of habit, I leaned over and put my arm around my husband's back and leaned up against him. My husband jumped back, and it was then I realized that my husband had left the circle minutes ago and I had just hugged a different tall man. I've now learned to look up and make sure my husband is next to me before caressing his back. Yep, I'm 5 feet 0, husband is 6 feet 3 inches. A couple weeks ago I almost tried to kiss his sister because she's 5 minutes and 10 seconds and they were both wearing dark jeans and a red shirt. Once a certain height is met, I guess I just tune out the rest. Plus, they both have long slim athletic builds so it's hard. Not me but my neighbors. A set of identical twin guys married a set of identical twin gals. Not kidding. Kinda creepy actually, but one time they were going out on dates and both sets of twins decided to prank the other and switch. At the time they hadn't been dating long but they are now married. And anyways they ended up being with the right ones but didn't really know it for an hour or so. LOL. I hope both sets of twins have kids at the same time. Not me, but my uncle and father. They were playing tag and my father was running from my uncle. My father came across a mirror and ran for his life thinking that was his brother, my uncle. They have the best of stories but this is the only one I remember. Not a spouse but so. Briefly dated a twin when I was in my early 20s. She lived with her sister. I slept with the sister. Unknowingly, I was over, waiting for the GF to stop by. The sister let me in and then left. Well, she left, then came back, announcing she was my GF. Very early on into the relationship and we had a very good time. She left soon after because work called. I had to go in. Needless to say, when my GF actually got home, I figured it out. Sexy times ensued again. I kept the secret. We broke up soon after. Unrelated, sister immediately started texting me, so there's that. Well, that's a crappy sister. I worked with a set of identical twins for about 3 months before I knew there were 2 of them. They did look very identical and we all worked in the field, which meant we were all wearing matching uniforms. I'd need to be at the office usually once or twice a week maximum. I'd seen Donnie talking to another guy so I knew his name was Donnie but hadn't actually worked with him directly yet. Later I did in fact work with Ronnie. I just assumed I'd heard his name wrong. Then one day at the office I walked in and Donnie and Ronnie were both there standing next to each other. Caught me off guard a bit. I casually dated an identical twin. The 2 of them were so similar that they were able, by switching hairstyles, which were pretty similar anyway, even fool their mother, and way. I had no problem telling them apart, and mine was the cuter one, in my eyes. But I was in my early 20s, so I probably tried to kiss the wrong one by accident about 30 times. I was not a good person when I was younger. Arrived at my girlfriend's house. She was doing some gardening with her headphones in. I thought it would be a good idea to sneak up on her, spin her round and plant one on her. Kissed her. Her eyes widened. She pulled away. It wasn't my girlfriend. It was her twin sister. Turns out my girlfriend set it up. She told me she was home alone, doing gardening. She watched from the window expecting to see me have an awkward conversation with her sister. Didn't actually expect me to kiss her. Girlfriend laughed about it. Her sister didn't. Left it pretty awkward between me and her sister. We're not twins, but my brother and I look so similar it's scary, and usually wear very similar clothing. He recently got married, so over the course of the past year, I have almost been kissed, been hugged from behind, almost had my crotch grabbed, and had my butt slapped and fondled countless times. It's awkward every time. I think your sister-in-law might just be into you. My husband is a twin. They are mirror, not identical, but he and his brother look and sound very different to me. They look similar enough that my dad and other people can't tell them apart because they don't like to be in the same place at the same time, so they are rarely side by side to compare. I worked in the same department as my brother-in-law. Got him hired after I married his brother. My boss for the longest time would get mad at my bill for showing up in jeans. That was my husband. Co-workers would get really confused when they saw my husband and my brother-in-law on different sides of the building. That sort of thing. Most embarrassing for me? Being asked if I'd ever had a threesome with them both. I get that question a lot. My next oldest sister was not my twin, but were often mistaken for twins. She was home from boot camp and I was getting ready for a date with my boyfriend. She was doing the bathrobe big bowl of ice cream thing in the kitchen. My boyfriend arrived. I opened the window of my bedroom and told him to come in. I was almost ready. I am upstairs in my bedroom and I hear her yelling and beating on someone. She'd been away. She never met my boyfriend. He thought it was me in the kitchen. He said, "Oh, you aren't dressed yet," and reached from behind and put his hands on her boobs. She thought she was being assaulted and started screaming and hitting him and throwing things at him. She learned some skills in boot camp. I ran downstairs and she shouted for me to call the police and he was cowering in the corner of the kitchen trying to explain. TLDR. My boyfriend thought my sister was me and ended up getting a beatdown of epic proportions. Early on when dating my wife and me her sister for the first time, they were wearing similar outfits. As we were leaving my house I turned around to lock the door, then caught up and spanked the wrong sister. Quickly realized what I had done and apologized profusely. Still get crap about it to this day 10 years later. Dating a twin. They live together and will often just fall asleep in random places around their home. I went into my boyfriend's room and saw his figure asleep, same hair, shape, etc., and crawled on in to wake him up. Needless to say, it was the twin and he laughed really hard about the whole situation, whereas I was horrified. This was near the early parts of the relationship, so it was more embarrassing than it would be today. Haha. Not twins, but my GF and her oldest sister look a lot alike. They decided to wear the same Halloween outfit at their cousin's party. He bought a huge ice luge for shots. I walked up behind her sister and whispered in her ear, "So who's doing the luge?" It was super funny and every now and then she'll do this to me. I had two girls with an identical twin. When we broke up he requested DNA tests. Both came back as his, but the younger daughter was only a 99.98% match. He swears his twin brother must be the father. I never touched his brother. He swears his twin brother must be the father. I never touched his brother. So you think? I posted this last week in another thread, but it fits better here. One time we went to play laser tag, seniors in high school. I was on a different team than both my GF and her twin sister. I ran up behind the twin, turned her around, picked her up by her butt and kissed her. Whoops, she and I never mentioned it to anyone. There was definitely a point where I realized it was the wrong twin, and that point came before the point where we stopped. I've read this last time you posted it. Man, I spend way too much time on this website. My sister and I are a year apart, but we seem to have identical voices. We can tell us apart, but no one else can, and move the same. I walked into her house and was doing stuff in her kitchen. Her husband was busy in another room and yelled over that we should go upstairs for some sexy times before your sister gets here. I politely declined. My sister and I thought it was hysterical. Brother-in-law was horrified and embarrassed for ages. Not identical twins but a look-alike. My aunt had just gotten married and they'd stopped at a hotel for their honeymoon. Well, they were in the lobby and she saw her husband facing the other way and she went up behind him and hugged him and whispered, "Don't you think it's about time we went to the room?" in a really seductive manner. The guy turns around. Not her husband. Orco taco. Orco taco has to be my new favorite saying, "Thank you kind stranger." When I was in high school, I started dating a guy. I saw him in the hallway one time and ran up and gave him a hug. He responded with, "Hey," then the guy I was actually dating walked up to us. That's how I found out he had a twin. I made really quick friends with a guy in 7th grade at art school. We hung out all the time and I knew he had 2 brothers who went to the regular high school in the district, so I never met them. About 8 months into our friendship I was invited to his mitzvah. I told him I always forget which one is for boys or girls, bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah. He said bar for boys, bat for girls, but his would be a b'nai mitzvah for him and his twin. I knew him for almost a year before learning one of his brothers was a twin. A bit late to party but a bit of a double whammy for me. Me and my brother sound the same. Even our mom could not tell us apart. Let's call us A and B. In our school days I had a friend whose big brother also used to be my big brother's friend. Let's call them X and Y. A is friend with X and B is friend with Y. What we didn't realize is that those 2 brothers also sound quite the same. Cue the old rotary phones. X calls looking for me. A. B answer the phone. X recognized the voice as A. B also recognized the voice of X as Y. They both chats and makes up important plans about when and where to meet. It was really awkward when my big brother showed up to hang around with my friends without me. Not a twin, but I took a scuba diving course with 8 other people, all strangers to me. 2 were a couple, and the girl looked nothing like me by face, but we had similar hair and similar body shapes. We wore wetsuits to dive, so then we were all wearing the same thing. While standing on the boat looking out over the water, the boyfriend came up behind me, put his arm around me, and came in to kiss my face. Then when he saw my face stopped suddenly and apologized and we started laughing. He said, "Don't tell Emily I did that." There was an upside to us looking alike. We have a DVD of our dives, and with the masks on we look the same, so it looks like we each have double the camera time. Not a spouse, but I am an identical twin. My sister and I like to mess with my boyfriend sometimes. Like for example, I'll be holding his hand and while he's not paying attention I'll switch my hand to my sister's and see how long it takes him to notice. It gives my friends and his friends a good laugh. This one time, I was off getting lunch or something and my sister comes over to his table since her friends sit there as well, and he hugs her from behind. Eventually he realizes it's not me, but he just plays along with it out of embarrassment. I was kinda mad at first but I just laughed it off, and to be fair, she was wearing my jacket so it wasn't his fault entirely. We still laugh about it. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.